The mirror. Held up high and from afar, a fogged mirror reflects me. Will my reflection ever be clear? No one around to see all my angles and doubts. The blurred, blinded eyes can't see past assumptions. The mirror bears expectations, stories, deceptions, but no reality, I'm afraid. A closer look reveals nothing but perceptions. A change in angle opens paper-thin perspectives, a living looking glass of imagined non-fiction narratives. Not to be seen are the images others search in me. Is this a broken mirror if the reality reflected is never accurate? The pieces tightly placed together by unfounded beliefs show me nothing but flaws, fears, wishes and ideas, mistakes and corrections, ideals and imperfections. I got so many questions to ask my reflection. This isn't Snow White. I stand in front of myself unanswered until the mirror cracks. The beliefs reflected crumble under query, and the shards of glass end up scattered across the floor. Shattered reflections, still no reality anywhere near. I'm the only one left to clean up the mess of my fragmented past cracking under my feet. Fabricated, its edges can still cut my flesh, sharpened throughout years of delusion. How can I avoid bleeding into awakening? Welcome to the Memento Mori Lab podcast. I'm Myra, your host and aspiring writer friend. The poem you just heard, called The Mirror, will lead us into our topic for the day. I've constantly asked myself, who am I? And this episode is not about me per se, but it's about this specific question that we all ask ourselves. And I don't think I have an answer for that. Not a complete answer that I would be satisfied with anyway. Do you have an answer? One that doesn't include your job or your name or your relation to your family? I say that because I think we have a hard time looking at ourselves and truly seeing ourselves. When I look in the mirror, metaphorically and literally speaking, I'm usually on the hunt for flaws. And it's not a conscious decision. Most of us have this self-critic in our heads that rarely gives us any rest, isn't it? And this critic makes it so hard for us to find the beauty within ourselves because it's always looking for what's wrong, for the mistakes, for where we fell short. And when it finds them, it doesn't let go. You probably heard people saying that we tend to find what we are looking for. And that's pretty accurate. For instance, if your eyes searched a room for the yellow color and everything yellow, so you would see books, sticky notes, and you would find almost all the yellow things. Then, what if I asked you to name everything blue that you just saw without a second look? You would probably miss out on a lot of blue things, don't you think? So how can we look in the mirror and see truly ourselves if we don't know what we're looking for, or if we are only looking for flaws? If that's all we are searching for, that's all we'll find. And the mirror idea goes far beyond our physical appearance. We do the same with our creative work, our relationships, our lives. This metaphorical mirror never reflects ourselves. Our interpretation of the world seems to gather broken pieces of reality and puts them together in our minds, in odd compositions, like Picasso in Cubism. Though the question, who are you, seems heavy and empty all at once. We are social animals, and who we are depends on others around us and our environment. I guess a person would only be able to find out their essence if they woke up one day and they were completely alone in the world. No one else around. Can you imagine that? This is an interesting thought experiment. If I was the only one left, would my flaws still be relevant? Would the criticism of my inner critic matter? Would it even exist? Maybe not for long. Self-criticism is part of fear's entourage. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, of embarrassment, and so on. But if I were the only person around, maybe I wouldn't be able to experience any of those things, right? We are only embarrassed in front of the other people. There wouldn't be anyone to reject me. The failure would not be as important if no one else saw it. Let's stay on this experiment for a sec. What would you do? I mean, after all the fun stuff of destroying an entire store with a baseball bat, dancing through the aisles of the supermarket and grabbing random things to eat, and going to an arts and crafts store to get absolutely everything you ever wanted. No one? Okay, that's just me then. Anyway, let's suppose all animals are safe, you are safe, and you have whatever you need to survive, because I'm getting a bit anxious just thinking about the consequences of people suddenly disappearing. So, everything is fine, but you're all alone. What would you do then? Would your dreams still be your dreams with no one around to see you realize them? Without any external validation available, what would you really want to do? Would you finally learn the things you always wanted to learn? Would you let your creativity run wild, create amazing things, and live your best life? I mean, lonely for sure, but best life, creatively speaking. Or with no one to watch, would you just fold like a cheap chair? Isn't it interesting? Though, this makes us see how much of what we do for others to see us doing. There's a quote I love from the writer Michael A. Grecker that fits well here. He says, quote, "We are not who we think we are. We are not who they think we are. We are who we think they think we are." End quote. More often than not, what we think about ourselves just isn't accurate. And throughout life, we keep stumbling on proofs that make our beliefs crumble. We cannot be who other people think we are because we don't know what they think and no one knows us well enough. So, we are what we think others think we are. It's a bit of a mindfuck, but hopefully it makes sense. Consciously or not, we have these stories about who we are, our personality, our values, and so on, and they were built in relation to the world around us. But in this thought experiment, there would be no one around to bounce your reflection back. So what would you actually see in the mirror? It would be liberating and terrifying. It's hard to fathom what we would be without anyone around, isn't it? For a people pleaser like me, it's nearly impossible. Nonetheless, this kind of experiment can open our eyes to things we never thought about before. We wear so many hats and masks throughout our lives that it's hard to really figure out who we are without them. Sometimes we have to change from one to another multiple times a day. And now we also need to wear actual masks, though some people think their metaphorical ones are enough, which they are not. The mask also needs to cover your nose and your mouth, and you can't take it off to talk to someone. Just wear your face mask on top of all the other masks, please. Got sidetracked for a second there. As time goes by, I've been trying not to question who I am as often and explore it instead. We need to give ourselves permission to try things, removing the assumptions we made about ourselves in the past and ignoring whatever the mirror seems to reflect. This also allows us to find out who we are not, which might even be more important. So challenge your assumptions, whether that's I don't eat broccoli or I can't draw, to even the most profound questions you can think of. It's your chance to really go deep. The poem from the beginning of the episode is a way of saying that questioning our beliefs can make us see our reality in a different light. And that can be about who we are, what we think, our judgment of what is right and wrong, and so many other things. Every time we question beliefs, try different things, or try to push ourselves beyond our so-called limitations, we end up finding new bits and pieces of who we are and of whom we are not. Like a puzzle that most likely will never be completed, and that's okay. Sometimes the pieces look scrambled all over the place, a complete mess, but little by little you find a corner piece here, another one there, and suddenly it starts to form a shape. Then you notice that some pieces don't fit. Maybe they did at first, but not anymore. And you can let those go because now you see that you don't need to complete the puzzle to see the big picture. Lately, I've been thinking more and more about why rather than who or what. Understanding why might be a good path to understanding ourselves. Why we do what we do, why we want what we want. And this led me to write the next poem. Why do we do what we do? Why do you choose the beliefs you choose? Why do you chase the way you do? Why sleep the way you sleep? Why speak the way you speak? Why do we weigh the bodies we weigh? Why do we worship the way we do? Why feel the way we feel? Why fear the way we fear? Why do they think the thoughts they think? Why do they thresh the way they do? Why hate the way they hate? Why help the way they help? Why do I loathe the feelings I loathe? Why do I love the way I do? Why disguise the way I disguise? Why dismiss the way I dismiss? When did you learn to judge? When did we learn to dread? When did they learn to fight? When did I learn to hide? What is it that you see without the lenses of your convictions? Why do you see what you see? Why don't you see everything else? Take off the layers of learned beliefs, forget all fabricated assumptions, and look far beyond the mirror. What is it that you see? I could dissect this poem, and we could talk about the meanings behind each question for hours, but maybe it's more interesting for you to take the puzzle pieces you see fit. This episode came about because I feel like a lot of what we do and what we don't do is tied to other people around us. Our fears of being rejected from society, of being judged, keep us from doing the creative work we want to do. We don't want to make a fool of ourselves. Just thinking about it is painful. And we see the quote-unquote weird ones being judged by others, don't we? Sometimes we are the ones judging them. What we don't see is that the thing we call normal does not exist. There are just way too many people hiding or suppressing all their quirkiness. Allowing yourself to explore who you are, why you are, rather than defining it, is the best gift you can give to yourself. The word around is that being yourself is liberating, and I am starting to find that out. When we are our true selves, that's also when we can begin to improve and truly grow. The paradox to keep in mind, though, is that each of us is unique, important, and special. And simultaneously, we are nothing but specks of dust in the vast universe. I hope this episode gives you something to think about. That's what I got for today, and I added one last poem at the end of this episode about my journey of finding myself. I hope you like it. What would you do if you were the last person on Earth? Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram and let me know. Also, for more artsy stuff, make sure you follow at memento.mori.lab on Instagram. If you liked this episode, please make sure you share it with your friends and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Here is the poem titled Herself. Herself. A familiar bubbly noise burst around her. With every odd dance move and remark, the sound of laughter fed her soul. An oblivious joy filled up the room. Her light could light any dark, while her darkness went unseen. She never put down her smile, afraid of losing laughs and finding herself. Her true self, she knew, would struggle to fit in. Her eyes would read between the lines, her ears would hear the undertones, her mouth would finally speak her mind. Should she continue to conform instead, while real happiness escaped her? Or would she thread outside the lines and realize there's no real in for the self to fit? Thanks for hanging around till the end. See ya!